ॐ शुक्लाम्बरधरं विष्णुं शशिवर्णं चतुर्भुजं प्रसन्नवदनं ध्यायेत् सर्वविघ्नोपशान्तये। सरस्वती नमस्तुभ्यं वरदे कामरूपिणि विद्यारम्भं करिष्यामि सिद्धिर्भवतु मे सदा। सदाशिवसमारम्भां शङ्कराचार्यमध्यमाम् अस्मदाचार्यपर्यन्तां वन्दे गुरुपरम्परां। श्रुतिस्मृतिपुराणानाम् आलयं करुणालयं नमामि भगवत्पादं शङ्करं लोकशङ्करम्। शङ्करं शङ्कराचार्यं केशवं बादरायणं सूत्रभाष्यकृतौ वन्दे भगवन्तौ पुनः पुनः। ईश्वरो गुरुरात्मेति मूर्तिभेदविभागिने व्योमवद्व्याप्तदेहाय दक्षिणामूर्तये नमः। सहनाववतु सहनौ भुनक्तु सह वीर्यङ्करवावहै तेजस्विनावधीतमस्तु मा विद्विषावहै। ॐ शान्तिः शान्तिः शान्तिः। कठोपनिषद अध्याय 1 वल्ली 2 मंत्र 12। तं दुर्दर्शं गूढमनुप्रविष्टं गुहाहितं गह्वरेष्ठं पुराणम् अध्यात्मयोगाधिगमेन देवं मत्वाधीरः हर्षशोकौ जहाति। So far, Yama glorified Nachiketa as a qualified student for Atma Vidya. Through glorifying Nachiketa, Yama glorified the Atma Vidya itself. Atma Vidya is great, it is rare, and it is not deserved by everyone. To receive Atma Vidya, one should have special qualification. After glorifying Atma Vidya, now Yama talks about the phala of Atma Vidya. Where does the Atma Vidya lead to? What phala does the Atma Vidya bring about? What result does the Atma Vidya bring about? Yama explains in following two verses, Mantra 12 as well as 13. The phala of Atma Vidya is twofold. We can put it in this way. It's a way of putting it. Number one, freedom from samsara. And samsara is characterized by harsha and shoka. It is one way of understanding samsara. Harsha and shoka. The emotional ups and downs are harsha and shoka. Sometimes there is harsha, elation, and then there is shoka, depression, dejection. So all of us have two poles. Sometimes elated, happy, oh, everything is fine. So sometimes a shoka, we lose hopes. So this harsha and shoka keep happening. An ajnani gets thrown up and down in the waves of harsha and shoka, in the waves of elation and dejection. So harsha shoka is one way of understanding samsara. So for a while he is up, everything is nice, but then it doesn't last long. Shoka, dejection, thrown up and down. So this is samsara. All emotional problems. All emotional problems can be included under harsha and shoka. The jnani becomes free from all emotional problems. In fact, Atma Jnana is the only solution for all our emotional problems. It puts an end to emotional vulnerability, as I put it. Most often people get into emotional issues, and sometimes they are not able to handle themselves. And then they go to counselors, psychotherapy. And the psychotherapy helps in handling the emotion up to certain extent. But the psychotherapy does not put an end to emotional vulnerability. It helps in managing the mind up to certain extent. Counseling. It doesn't put an end to the problem completely. Because in spite of psychotherapy, you remain a limited individual. You remain a psychic being, identified with your mind, your antahkaranam. With all your emotions. The ajnana is intact. Psychotherapy does not remove the ajnana. Therefore, psychotherapy is not a solution. It will help some people to it is like a patchwork for a while. But it does not give the permanent solution to the psychological issues. Because it doesn't go to the root of the problem. The root of the problem is ajnana, ignorance. Atmajnana puts an end to ignorance. Thereby, it puts an end to psychological vulnerability. That is why harsha shokau jahati. The person is free from harsha and shoka. All emotional issues. Means samsara nivrittihi or shoka nivrittihi or dukkha nivrittihi. This itself can be called as shantihi. Shanti. Shanti means freedom from problem. When there is no problem, it is called shanti. No turbulences, no disturbances. Shanti. So that is one aspect of moksha, the result of jnana. Then there is another aspect of moksha. It is sukha prapti. Atyantika sukha prapti. Ananda prapti. Paramananda prapti. A jnani attains paramananda by discovering his completeness. He gets the ultimate satisfaction. It is another aspect of moksha. Dukkha nivritti and sukha prapti, or shanti and sukha. Dukkha nivritti itself can be called shanti. Later on, Kathopanishad itself will put it in that language. Shashvata shanti, permanent shanti, and shashvata sukha, permanent happiness, permanent satisfaction. These are the twofold results of Atmajnana, which are collectively called moksha. Shashvata sukha and shashvata shanti are collectively known as moksha. That is where the Atma Jnana leads to. Now, in this verse, Yama talks about harsha shoka nivritti, freedom from harsha shoka, means freedom from samsara. See the verse. Tam durdarsham. We have read it, I think, yeah. Tam durdarsham. Yama is describing the Atma. Atma is durdarshaha. Difficult to know, difficult to understand, not easy to understand. Gudham anupravishtam. The Atma has entered inaccessible region. Gudham. Gudham means gahanam, an inaccessible region. Anupravishtam, it has entered. Means difficult to fathom, difficult to find. Bhāshyakara will explain this Gudham anupravishtam as prakrata vishaya vijnanaihi prachannam. He is hidden by the perception of sense objects, hidden by the perception of various anatma, non-self, concealed by the anatma. We will discuss later on as we go to the Bhāshya. Guhahitam, guhayam buddhau sthitam. He is present in buddhi. In Vedanta Shastra, buddhi is called guha most often, because the Atma is found in the buddhi, in the antahkarana, as the illuminer of the antahkarana. Where can we find a Chaitanya? Though Atma is present everywhere, the Chaitanya is present everywhere, but we cannot find the Chaitanya everywhere. Sarvatra avasthitopyatma na sarvatra avabhasate. Though the Atma is present everywhere, it does not become evident everywhere. Na sarvatra avabhasate. It does not shine everywhere. Because what we see everywhere is only jada. We don't see Chaitanya everywhere. Buddhaveva avabhaseta. But it shines only in the buddhi, in our antahkarana, in our mind, as the very illuminer of the mind, expressing its sentiency. Swacheshu pratibimbavat. Swacheshu pratibimbavat. So like a pratibimba, like a reflection in clean surface, swachha, in clean surface, only the reflection happens, not in ordinary surface. Like that, the Atma also becomes evident only in the buddhi, not everywhere. That is why Buddhau guhayam sthitam. Atma is present in the buddhi, means it becomes available in the buddhi as consciousness, not everywhere. So if we have to find the consciousness, we have to look into our mind. Who illumines my mind? See, all the objects are illumined by our eyes, our senses. The external objects become evident to us only through our senses. Now we have to ask, who illumines our senses? What illumines our senses? It is our mind. Without our mind, our senses would have been useless. Only when the mind is there, the senses are able to perceive. Therefore, the senses and their functions are illumined by the mind. Manas, antahkaranam. Now, who illumines the antahkaranam? Who knows the presence and absence of the antahkaranam? That is when we arrive at the Atma. It is the Chaitanya, Atma, me. That is how, only as the witness of the antahkarana, we can understand the Chaitanya. So, if we have to understand the Chaitanya, we have to go to our antahkarana. We have to analyze our antahkarana. That is why guhahitam, it is present in the buddhi guha. Gahvareshtham, Gahvareshtham, Gahvare sthitam. Gahvara means a difficult place, a disastrous place. You don't know what is going to happen tomorrow. Afghanistan. It is a Gahvara. We don't know who is ruling and who is going to rule. Unpredictable. And what laws are going to come, people don't know. Gahvara, Vishama Pradesha, a disastrous place, a place of disasters. And here the place of disasters is this body. Our Sharira is a Gahvara. It is a Vishama Pradesha, a place of difficulties. Our body is full of unpredictabilities, all problems, body as well as mind. All problems are there in the body and mind. All samsara. The whole world is there in our mind. It is another Gahvara. So many problems. And we keep creating new problems by allowing so many things to enter into our mind. All our subjectivities. Therefore, this Sharira, body, mind and senses, this Upadhi is a Gahvara, a Vishama Pradesha. The Atma is present here Gahvareshtham. It is present in the body, mind and senses. In the upadhi. Becomes available through the upadhi. Expresses through the upadhi. And is identified with the upadhi. When it is identified with the upadhi, there is samsara. Because the problems of the upadhi are superimposed on the atma. That is why there is samsara. Puranam, he is Puranaha. Purana means Puratanaha. Chirantanaha, Sanatanaha, eternal. Purana means eternal. Ever new and ever old. Pura api nava eva. Ever new and ever old. That is Purana. Ever new means it does not lose its quality. It has not become old. It has not lost its value. Everything else in the world can lose its value. It depreciates. Depreciation value. So, your computer or smartphone, it depreciates. When you bought your computer or your smartphone, you might have paid a good sum of money, 1 lakh or 2 lakh rupees. Some people might have paid when they bought their electronic gadget, 1.5 lakh. But then if you try to sell it after 1 or 2 months, it has become old. So it has lost its value because the objects have parts and there is wear and tear. So everything else in the world can lose its value. It can also lose its value because of another reason. The value of any object depends on what it means to you. Value of any object in the world depends on how far it will give happiness to you. As long as it can give me happiness, I will have value for it. And the degree to which it can give me happiness will keep varying. The degree to which any external object can give me happiness can vary from time to time. That is why its value fluctuates in relation to me. That is why all market keeps fluctuating. Sometimes it is bullish, sometimes it is bearish. Bull and bear. It keeps fluctuating. And everything depends on the psychology of the people. If you go to the share market, what determines the share market? It's mainly the psychology of the people. You can ask any economist. Depends on what people think. That is why nobody can predict what will be the value of the shares in the next few minutes. Nobody can predict. So the value of an external object depends on how far it can give me happiness. And it varies. Whereas the value of the Atma can never vary. Because Atma is myself. Value of myself for me will never vary. I am always valuable for me. The Atma is always valuable. That is why Bhāshya says, Nava are patyuh kamaya patif priyo bhavati, atmanastu kamaya patif priyo bhavati. Patyuh kamaya patihi priyahana bhavati. Nobody loves husband for the sake of the husband. Everyone loves husband for one's own sake. Atmanastu kamaya. If the husband doesn't give happiness to you, likewise, Nava are jayaye kamaya jaya priya bhavati, atmanastu kamaya jaya priya bhavati. Nobody loves wife for the sake of the wife. Everyone loves wife for one's own sake. That is why, if you fight too much with your husband, he will say, get out. Little bit you may be able to fight to a tolerable degree. So, that is why the value of the external objects keep varying. But the value of Atma remains constant. Because everything else is loved for the sake of the Atma. Everything becomes valuable because of the value for the Atma. Therefore, Atma never loses its value. Therefore, always new. Nava eva, always new. This is another interpretation. And it is ever old. Ever new and ever old. It is ever old because at any point of time, it existed much before that. It existed much before any given point of time. Therefore, ever old, ever new and ever old. Pura api nava eva. Therefore, Puranaha. By implication, it means eternal, Sanatanaha. Adhyatma, Devam. One more word, Devam. Dyotanat Devaha. One who shines. The effulgent one means consciousness is Devaha. Deva means Atma, Chaitanya. Matva, understanding the Deva, getting the knowledge of the Atma. Here Deva does not mean Devata. Deva means Atma, Chaitanya. How to know the Atma? Adhyatma yogadhigamena. Adhyatma yogaha means Atmani Chetasaha Samadhanam Adhyatma Yoga. Focusing the mind on the Atma. Focusing the mind on the Atma means focusing the mind on the process of Atma Jnana, the means for Atma Jnana. Atma Jnana sadhanas, Shavana, Manana, Nididhyasana. That is where you can focus the mind on. So, Shavanadi sadhaneshu samadhana, focusing on Shavana, Manana, Nididhyasana, etc. And to focus on Shavana and so on, one should withdraw one's mind from all other engagements. An extroverted mind cannot do Shavana effectively. If the mind is very much preoccupied with so many other external affairs, what he is doing, what she is doing, what is happening in the office, what is happening in the other places. If the mind is too much occupied in the things outside, Shavana is not possible effectively. Shavana and Manana and Nididhyasana, nothing is possible. It doesn't get quality time. So, to focus on Shavana, one should withdraw oneself from other preoccupations. So, that is Adhyatma Yoga. Withdrawing the mind from sense objects and focusing on the Jnana Sadhana, the means of Atma Jnana. Tasya adhigamaha, Adhyatma Yogasya adhigamaha, its attainment of focus on Atma Jnana. It has to be accomplished with effort. It does not come easily. So whenever the mind gets attracted, gets drawn to unnecessary things, one should withdraw it and say, no, this is not needed. This is not time for such things. Let me now focus on Atma Jnana. Let me try to listen to the classes properly. And let me try to understand what the Swami says. Let me try to understand what Kathopanishad has to say. And let me try to dwell on it. Contemplate on it. So one has to keep suggesting one's mind from time and again. Adhyatma yogadhigamena matva. So with the attainment of Adhyatma yoga, one gets Atma Jnana. Dhiraha. So he is a dhiraha. After knowing, he becomes a dhira. So dhira you can understand as a dhiman, a jnani. Here dhiraha means a jnani, one who has Atma Jnana. Harsha shokau jahati he becomes free from harsha and shoka, free from elation and dejection. See the Bhāshya. Yam tvam jnātumichhasi atmanam tam durdarsham dukkhena darshanam asya iti durdarsham atisukshmatvat tam yam tvam jnātumichhasi atmanam. So Bhāshyakara supplies this. Yam atmanam tvam jnātumichhasi. Which atma you want to know? In the Moola, there is a tam, tat shabda. There should be a corresponding yat shabda. Yat clause. A clause with the yat shabda. Bhāshyakara supplies it. Yam atmanam tvam jnātumichhasi. Which atma you want to know and you have asked for? Tam, that atma. Durdarsham. So tam has adjectives. Tam is described. That atma is described. Durdarsham is equal to dukkhena darshanam asya iti durdarsham. It's a darshanam. Darshanam does not mean seeing here, not visual perception. Visual perception of Atma is not possible. Why it is not possible? Because Atma is nirgunaha, arupam. Atma does not have rupa, no color, no form. And if something does not have color and form, visual perception is not possible. Therefore, if someone sees something, someone claims, I have seen Atma, then you have to understand some problem is there. So there may be some people coming. I saw a blue light, that is Atma. Blue and light, both are not Atma. So there are some schools, they teach Atma Darshana, they conduct 2.5 days camp. And the 2.5 days camp, you get the vision of Atma. What is Atma? You see a blue light in your heart. That is Atma. So the camp duration is only 2.5 days. So for 2.5 days, 10 years back, the charge was 30,000 rupees. Now I don't know. You can find out. So visual perception is not possible. Therefore, darshanam should be understood as jnanam. It is jnana, understanding. Getting clear understanding of Atma. And the understanding happens in the mind. Manasaivanudrashtavyam. Manasaivedamaptavyam. Later on, Kathopanishad itself will say, we need to make use of our mind. Because the Atma Jnana, Aham Brahmasmi, this understanding happens in the mind as a vritti, as a thought modification in the mind. Even the jnana, Brahma Jnana, is a vritti in the mind. So don't think we have to make the mind blank. It is not so. The jnana happens in the mind. It is a vritti. Vritti jnana. Dukkhena darshanam asya iti durdarsham. It is difficult to understand the Atma. Why difficult to understand? Ati sukshmatvat. Because Atma is ati sukshmaha, very subtle, very abstract. The sukshma sharira is sukshma. Whatever we can see with our senses, whatever we can perceive with our senses is sthula. And we cannot perceive with our senses. It is sukshma. Our sukshma sharira, it is sukshma. In fact, from the Vedantic standpoint, even bacteria is sthula. Amoeba is sthula. Virus is sthula. Why virus is sthula? Because we can see virus. I don't know how many of you have seen, at least he has seen virus. Yeah. With the microscope, you can see virus, coronavirus. Therefore, virus is sthula. Visual perception is possible. May not be with the naked eyes, but with some instruments. You can extend the power of your eyes. In fact, microscope or telescope, it is nothing but an extension of our visual perception. That's all. It does not add to any other perception. It is not one more sense. Only one of our five senses is extended. Therefore, all our science, the observation that happens in science, it is all five senses. Nothing is beyond five senses. All that you study in science lab, in the scientific, science in the universities, in the lab, it's all five senses. They may have greatest form of telescope, best telescope, and best microscope, but everything is five senses. Just visual perception. That is why the domain of science is limited to the domain of visual perception. And then based on their observation, they postulate. So it is based on observation and inference. Pratyaksha and Anumana. All science is Pratyaksha and Anumana, and nothing beyond Pratyaksha and Anumana. Only two pramanas are employed. So, even virus is sthula. because it can be perceived visually. Then Sukshma, you cannot get the visual perception. You cannot perceive with your senses. Our mind, our senses, they are all Sukshma. But to great extent, their presence and absence is perceived by our Sakshi. The Sakshi can know them, our thoughts, etc. They become object of our Chaitanya. They don't become Indriya Pratyaksha. Indriya Pratyaksha means perception through our senses. It is Indriya Pratyaksha. The Sthula becomes Indriya Pratyaksha, available to our senses. Whereas the Sukshma does not become Indriya Pratyaksha. It is Sakshi Pratyaksha. It is witnessed by the Sakshi, the Chaitanya, directly. Without the interference of the senses. Certain things we can know. And then Atma is Ati Sukshma, even more subtle than Sukshma Sharira also. Because it cannot be objectified by anything. Even the Sakshi cannot objectify the Atma. It is Nirguna, no gunas. That is why most Sukshma, Ati Sukshma. Ati Sukshmatvat. Since it is Ati Sukshma, it is difficult to understand. That is why it takes time, takes effort. A focused Shravana is needed for a length of time to get a proper vision. So, tam durdarsham, gudham, gahanam, anupravishtam, prakrita vishaya vijnanaihi, vikara vijnanaihi is one reading. Another reading is prakrita vishaya vijnanaihi. The vikara is not needed. So without that it makes sense. Prakrita Vishaya Vijnanaihi is enough. Vikara you can put into bracket. Most of the readings have Vikara, most of the printed versions. But there is another reading that I found without Vikara. So Sachidanandendra Swamiji of Holenarsipur takes that reading. So he has done proper editing of all these Bhāshya, and he has taken Prakrita Vishaya Vijnanaihi reading. So that is a better reading. So Prakrita Vishaya Vijnanaihi, Prakrita Vishaya Vijnanaihi, Prachannam Ityetat, Gudham is equal to Gahanam, inaccessible region. Anupravishtam, it has entered an inaccessible region. Atma cannot enter any region. Atma has no entry or exit because Atma is all pervasive. Then what does Shruti mean? when it says Gudham Anupravishtam, Bhāshyakara explains the implied meaning, the Tatparya. Prakrita Vishaya Vijnanaihi Prachannam Ityetat. It is Prachanna. It is hidden, veiled by Prakrita Vishaya Vijnana, by the perception of Prakrita Vishayas. Prakrita means Prakriter Vikaraha Prakritaha. The modification of Prakriti, the effects of Prakriti. Prakriti means Maya. Maya Vikara. The effects of Prakriti. That is what we see everywhere. All Nama Rupas. All Nama Rupas are the effects of Prakriti. Therefore, they are called Prakrita. Prakrita Vishaya. All Vishayas are Prakrita. All sense objects. Their Vijnana, their knowledge, their cognition, it keeps us occupied. People are generally engaged in perceiving the Anatma. All Prakrita Vishaya are Anatma, non-self. Our mind is engrossed in the Anatma, engrossed in the non-self. That is why, though the Atma is very much evident, we miss the Atma. We do not even notice the presence of the Atma. Though it is even more evident than all the anatmas, all the sense objects. Let me ask you a question. How many objects are there on this table? Tell me how many things are there on this table. Okay, my hand is away. Don't include my hand and me. Other than me and my hand, how many things are there on this table? 5. Okay. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay. There are 5. Is there nothing more? Yeah. There is light. There is light which illumines every other object in the table. Even the light is there on the table. It is shining everywhere on the surface of the table. Without light, no other object could have been visible on the table. That is why the light is evident even before the other objects are evident. Yet, we are busy in seeing the other objects that are illumined by light, that becomes evident because of light. We are busy in them. Our mind is busy perceiving them. Therefore, it loses sight of the presence of light, does not notice the presence of light on the table. Likewise, the Atma is very much there and very much evident as the very consciousness, because everything else becomes evident because of the Atma. Therefore, even before any object becomes evident, the Atma is evident. Yet, when our mind is busy with the Anatma, with the perception of the Anatma, with the cognition of the Anatma, we miss the Atma. Though it is very much evident. Elsewhere, Shankaracharya gives the example of the 10th man, the leader. This is one aspect of the 10th man example. All of you know the story. But let me explain one aspect of this example, the story. The leader is busy counting the 10 people outside himself. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 people he found outside. And he is looking for the 10th man outside himself. So he is busy counting people other than himself. That is why he is not able to find the 10th man, who is the very self, very himself. Likewise, our mind is busy with the Anatma. That is why we miss the Atma. That is why the Atma is as though hidden, as though concealed by the Anatmas, by the perception of the Anatma, by the knowledge, experiences of the Anatma. That is the idea conveyed by Gudham Anupravishtam. It is as though hidden, though it is very much evident. Om Purnamadah Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnamevavashishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Harihi Om. Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. Harihi Om.